Julianne Ginter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tēnā koe, tēnā koutou e te whare. Tooth decay is a serious problem. It's probably one that people tend not to think about, but it is a preventable disease that has significant health and social impacts. Untreated tooth decay can lead to pain, dental abscesses, serious infection. It's something we should be attempting to reduce and eliminate in Aotearoa. It is the most common disease amongst both children and adults, and it significantly impacts, of course, poorer socioeconomic groups and children in particular. In 2013, more than 40% of all 5-year-olds and more than 60% of Māori and Pacific 5-year-olds had already experienced tooth decay. And of course, that's going to be a problem they go on to suffer the rest of their lives. The earlier it affects one, the more damaging it's going to be over the course of one's life. The Green Party is supporting this bill at first reading because we recognize broadly the public health benefits of community water fluoridation. We also recognize that there's a need to balance the needs of individuals and the rights of individuals to opt out of mass medication, but overall, it's pretty obvious that low levels of fluoridation that are used in New Zealand and proposed in those areas where they aren't currently used are not harmful to health. And there's a whole body of evidence supporting this. The Royal Society of New Zealand, Health Effects of Water Fluoridation, a review of the scientific evidence, makes it very clear that the health benefits are substantial in New Zealand, particularly for children. There's 40% less tooth decay for New Zealand children living in areas with community water fluoridation than those who are living in areas without it. That's quite compelling evidence about the benefits. That said, it is a bit of an ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. And it's pretty interesting that this government is willing to pass legislation for community water fluoridation, which will have some benefits, but not to take other public health measures that would significantly reduce the harm caused by sugary drinks, for example. When we fluoridate the water supply, people don't have the option necessarily to avoid it, even if they don't need it. So I don't see how that approach is less nanny state, if you will, than taking an approach of regulating harmful additives to drinks and food, like a sugary drinks tax, the revenue of which could be used to fund health promotion and possibly even to fund healthcare services like dental care. Overall, the Green Party wants to see a very holistic approach that recognizes that the food that we eat, the things that children drink, all play some impact both in their overall health and the well-being of the entire community. And so for that reason, I think it's disappointing that the government is unwilling to investigate options that would be equally cost-effective or more cost-effective and not only solve the problem of tooth decay, but solve the problems of, or reduce the problems and harms of type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, and other obesity-related chronic diseases, all of which are caused by overconsumption of sugary drinks. And I think the only reason that this government isn't pursuing a very effective strategy that's also been recommended by the Prime Minister's Chief Science Advisor, recommended by the World Health Organization, which is to implement a tax on sugary drinks and use the revenue to fund health promotion and other services, is because there are large corporates, Big Soda, who stands to miss out if people reduce their consumption of sugary drinks. There's no other reason why. If you've got compelling evidence that policies are going to be effective for people, effective at reducing the harms caused by tooth decay and other chronic diseases, that it's going to be cost effective, why wouldn't we implement those policies to help protect our children? I suppose it's because the national government is ideologically opposed to an approach that would reduce the profits for large corporates, even though it would benefit our children. Coming back to this bill, the Green Party is supporting this at first reading. We do have some concerns and questions that I'll be raising at Select Committee. Firstly is, while we understand the rationale of this being a public health decision and therefore that it might rest better, sit better with the district health boards because they're in a good position to evaluate the health evidence. The reality is that the funding and the money to pay for community water fluoridation is going to have to come from local councils and ratepayers. So there is an interesting imbalance there where district health boards might be making decisions that impose fiscal costs on local authorities. And I think that's something that we need to raise. I acknowledge that the Minister, Peter Dunn, noted that Local Government New Zealand supports this bill, but I would be interested to know how local authorities feel about district health boards making decisions that impact their bottom lines and how much money they're going to have to spend. Another concern is that community water fluoridation really might not make sense in some parts of New Zealand. For example, Christchurch is one of the only cities in the world to have a pure artesian water source that's untreated. And I know that's very much valued by that local community. And the cost of fluoridating water in Christchurch would be significantly higher because there isn't that infrastructure set up to treat the water. So I wonder if this bill is going to mean that the District Health Board in Christchurch is considering the health impacts, but are they going to consider the disbenefits to Christchurch and the high fiscal impact of treating water in Christchurch, which is, of course, going to be a new cost. Finally, while there is considerable evidence of the benefits, the health benefits of community water fluoridation, and there's no question that the low levels of fluoridation that we're talking about do not have negative health impacts. Fluoride naturally occurs in the environment, including in water. It's lower in New Zealand than other parts of the world. It's known to have protective effect on teeth when used at the correct levels. Most water sources in New Zealand do not naturally contain fluoride at a level that helps prevent tooth decay, but it can just be topped up to that optimal level, which is still a very small level. An adult male would need to drink 1,520 glasses of water in one day to reach a toxic dose of fluoride. A one-year-old baby would need to drink 260 glasses of water in one day. So I don't think that the levels of fluoridation we're talking about really pose significant health risks. It's clear in that report from the Royal Society that there aren't these negative impacts, but it remains that there is also considerable concern and real fear out there amongst some people in the community, and that's what's driving some of this push against community water fluoridation. I think we have to recognize those concerns and fears, and I'm a little bit concerned that by transferring the decision to DHBs and not having any requirement to consult and educate and engage with the community, they're actually going to increase the fear amongst that very small percentage of the population who is very, very concerned about community water fluoridation. So it's more about the best way to get people on board is to engage with them and listen to their concerns. And so this is something else that we'll be raising at the Select Committee because it is really important to acknowledge that, that there are those fears and concerns that effectively, if DHBs do decide to do this, there might be some loss of personal choice, and we need to recognize that and balance that up against the very clear evidence in favor of the health benefits. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.